So first you have to choose the mass from C. That would be 12.0107, and you only have 1. So you multiply it by 1. Then you take a mass of hydrogen, and that would be 1.00799. And here you have a 4, so you multiply it by 4. And when you multiply it, then you add them, and that will give you 16.038. That would be the mass for CH4. Then you take the elements NO067, and then oxygen, that would be 15.99, and you multiply it by 2. You multiply them and then you add them, and that will give you 45.98. Then sulfur oxide. Then of sulfur you only have 1. That will be 1 times 32.065. And then oxygen, that would be 3. You multiply it by 15.99. That would give you 80.035. Now we have C6H6. You already know the procedure. That will be C. You have 6, so you have to multiply it by 6. And its mass is 12.0107. Then hydrogen, that also has 6, you multiply it by 6, and its mass is 1.00796. You add them, and that would give you 78.102. Then sodium iodide. Sodium, you only have 1, so you multiply it by 1. And its mass is 22.989. And iodide, you only have 1 also, so you multiply it by 1, and its mass is 126.94. You add them, and that would give you 149.88. Then potassium and sulfate. You have 2 from potassium, and that will be multiplied by 2, and its mass is 39.0983. Then you have 1 of sulfur, you multiply it by 1, and it will be 32.065. And then oxygen, you have 4, and that will be 15.9994. You add them, and that will give you 174.24. Now we have a tricky one because we have a parenthesis, but that will mean that all the numbers here you have to multiply it by the number here. So first is calcium. You have 3, so you have to multiply it by 3, and its mass is 40.078. Then you have phosphorus times 2, and its mass is 30.973. And oxygen, it has a 4 and a 2, so that means 8. And its mass is 15.9994. You add them all, and that will give you 310.07. It was really as you read in the problem, we need to see the relationship between glucose and ethanol. That would be glucose C6H12 oxygen 6 and ethanol 2C5H5OH plus 2CO2. So in the problem they are telling us that we start with 500.0 grams of glucose. And they ask us for a quantity of ethanol in both grams and liters. The density of ethanol they already given to us, and that would be 0.789 grams of milliliters. So we have a really long process, but we can do it. First, you have to take the molecular mass for both ethanol and for both glucose. For the first one would be carbon 6, hydrogen 12, oxygen 6. You're already here, so we're going to do it fast. You add them all, and that will give you 180.084 grams. We're going to name this number 1. Then ethanol. It's 2, carbon 2, hydrogen 5, plus 2. You already know how to take the mass, so we're going to do it fast. Remember to watch all these numbers. 2. You add them all, and that will give you 92.104 grams. We're going to name this number 2. So now, we already have those. And remember number 1 and number 2. We're going to do our procedure. We start with, as they told us, we start with 500.4 grams of glucose. We have to eliminate glucose, so we take number 1. That would be 180.084 grams of glucose, and that will give us the number 2. The number 2 is the molecular mass for ethanol. That will be 92.104 grams of ethanol. So you use your calculator, you divide this one by this one, and you multiply it by this one, and that will give you 255.93. You eliminated this, and it gave you grams of ethanol. So now we'll name this number 3. Remember the numbers 1, 2, and 3. At the beginning of the problem, they told us that we have to give both grams and liters. So now we have to make the procedure for liters. And you have to use this form, density equals grams divided milliliters, because they gave us milliliters at the beginning. And they already gave us density, that is 0.789 grams of milliliters. So they ask us what is the maximum of ethanol. So you have to take the volume equals mass divided density. You already have density, so you have to find volume because we also have the mass. That will be number 3. So we take density, that would be dividing, we put density, that is 0.789 grams of milliliters, and we take our number 3, that is 255.93 grams of ethanol. We divide, and that will give us 324.37 milliliters. So we divide it by 1,000 because they gave us milliliters and we want liters. So we divide it by 1,000 and that would give us 0.324 liters. We will name this number 4, and the number 4 and number 3 would be our final answers. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I hope this really works for you. Thank you.